Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wired for Success podcast. Today, we want to talk about modeling regulated responses. So, if you've been with us at the last episode, you will know that we spoke, or maybe not the last episode, but 2 episodes ago, you will know that we spoke about parents and teenagers' relationship and how obviously what we do conflict. We spoke about conflict, yeah. Steve?
We did.
Yes. Anyway, coming back to that. So one thing that is great is to say you shouldn't do this because I say so. But if you were to regulate the emotions when you are into a conflict zone, and I'm going to put the quotes here, with your teenager, what do you think would happen? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, this is my colleague Steve and myself, Patience, and we are the duo for the Wired for Success podcast. And as I said already, today we're talking about modeling regulated responses. All right, Steve, you take it away.
Brilliant. I'm going to pick up on the idea of the conflict zone and all of that sort of thing. So here's a good way to think about it. It's simply this, that quality of life improves for everybody in the room when the home isn't a battlefield.
Hmm.
Okay, battlefield's quite a strong word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So what we need to be aiming for is a space where learning can go on, where group regrouping can go on. Sometimes, we all get scattered to the four winds, as it were. Parents go to work, they pick up stresses at work, and then there's a bit more stress at home, perhaps not with the family, but with the admin or whatever. So there's loads of stuff going on that causes some chaos. And when a teen comes along with a question like, I want to do this, can I? Sometimes, because of all those stresses, the gut reaction is no. And we know why we've said no, but do we really have the time to stop, take a breath, and explain what it was all about? Often that gets lost. It gets lost in all the other stuff that's flying around, and that becomes difficult. And if we don't find it possible to take that time and we just say no and we move on, and we keep repeating that behavior, over time it becomes a kind of blueprint for our team. Oh, that's the way my parents dealt with that. That's the way they do it. This is the way forward. I've got it into my head. So they behave in a similar manner within their own relationships, within later relationships as they pick up family and so on and so on. So it all becomes a little bit complex and complicated. So we need to think about how we handle conflict, how we handle stress, how we handle things like failure. So how do we as parents handle those things? And I would encourage everybody right now to pause this video and just have a think about that. How do you handle those things? It's a simple question, but it could throw up some quite complex responses. As usual, though, if you've got a response, if you've got a comment that you would like to make or a direct message you'd like to send, do it. Do it right now, and we will respond. It's a good conversation to have.
Mm.
So teens learn most from the way that we as parents behave. And I would argue that they learn even more from how we behave than how we might preach occasionally. And I'm sure we all do a bit of that from time to time. Sometimes it's necessary. But it's our behavior that they model themselves on. So that's what we need to think about. And just before we jump on to expanding on this a little bit more, Patience, you raised a great point before we went to record this about education. So please
Yes.
share that.
So often when we speak, so there's this kind of label of saying educate your children or educate your teen. And when we talk about educating your teen, often parent thinks that it's an A plus B equals C type of thing, as if you're back in school and you are teaching a student. But actually, educating is exactly about what we're talking about today. It's about modeling. It's about having, obviously, the talk, always. It's about their actions, but it's also about reinforcing the behavior. So, for example, you are modeling a behavior, a certain behavior, and then you speak about it, and then you reinforce it by doing it often, but you also show your children that they also can use that response as well. So, I'm going to take a quick example to a really long time where I remember that I used to shout at my kids because in the morning we will be running everywhere because we had to come out of the house and I'll be shouting, "Where's your socks? Oh, come, this is this." And you're everywhere. Chaos. Chaos before 8 o'clock in the morning in the house. And I realized that myself, I wasn't liking this constant all the time I'm shouting. And it became like a habit every morning, just on the dot, from 7 to 8. It was like rah, 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 rah. So then I realized that the children also were really tense and really, how can I say that? Sharp in their responses. So therefore, I went like, no. And I started to change that behavior. Up until today, a lot of chaos happened between 7 and 8. But my response is much better because I've changed the way I detached myself emotionally. So it's not about me, it's about everybody, and it's also how are we setting the day. So therefore, whether there's chaos or not, and believe me, there is chaos, I just realized that having that behavior, being able to control my own emotions, also impacted the children in being able um, to regulate their own emotions going through the day. So that's basically what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a brilliant example. And also, I would challenge anybody to not put their hand up if they've not been in that place. I've got my hand up. I know exactly where you are. Okay, it's good to have a laugh about things like that. Occasionally, it's helpful for all of us and it releases some of the tension we might be feeling. But we have to think about, we're talking about teens, we're talking about adolescents, and we're talking about this great time of fairly intense change, physical, mental, all the rest of it. And going back to sharing moments and, sorry, modeling regulated responses. If we're stressed and our response to something is simply no, without showing any interest, without showing any curiosity about what's going on in their world, it shows in a way that we don't care.
Mm,
That's quite a blunt way of putting it, but it kind of shows them, well, we don't really care about that. The answer is no. But we don't want that. We want to show care.
yeah.
So what we need to do is think about our listening skills. We need to listen. We need to reflect. We need to show some empathy and we need to show some patience. It's hard work in the morning when the kids get up and they've got to go to school. They're thinking about 1,000 things that they need for the day. Did they do the homework? Did they do it well? Have they got the sandwiches or whatever they need? And then the parents hassling them. Have you got your socks? Where are your socks? Where did you leave them? I don't know. I can't remember because I'm too busy thinking about all this other stuff. So that's why you've got the chaos. So we need to spend some time reflecting on all of that, what's going on in their world. because that helps them to improve their own sense of identity, their own sense of self-worth, and a lot of other things as well. We can't cover everything in these podcasts. And when teens feel understood,
Mm.
then they're less reactive and more open. And if they're less reactive and more open, when we say no because, they're more likely to pause as we did
Mm.
and try to empathize with where we're coming from. They might not like it. I'm not saying they've got to like it, but at least some understanding of it.
Yes.
We talked a couple of weeks ago as well about barriers. We don't want barriers. What we need instead of barriers are bridges.
Mm.
So if we can bear that in mind, we need to create those bridges between whatever is going on in the world, in their world, our world, so that we can meet somewhere on the bridge and
Mm.
have those conversations. And all of that creates a special place, a kind of reservoir where there's trust, amongst other things. I keep saying amongst other things because there are a lot of other topics
Yes.
that this area pushes up. And if they've got this reservoir of trust, they can draw on it when life gets difficult.
Mm.
So there's a lot of positivity in there. And all of that is education. Okay, you can get into the world of studying education, where certainly in my studies we talked about formal education and informal education. Formal education tends to be sat at a desk or sat in a lecture hall or whatever, whereas informal education can take place anywhere, any place, anytime,
Yeah.
with anybody. So that's something we need to bear in mind. How, as parents that are going through perhaps some conflict, some stress, some failures, some challenges, a whole load of difficult things, how are we supposed to be available emotionally when all of that is going on?
Mm.
Now, there are a ton of things we can do about that. I talk a lot with my own clients about respond rather than react.
Mm.
How do we do that? Because sometimes when something's thrown at you and you're feeling stressed and wound up, very easy to react.
Yeah.
So what can we do? We can stop just for a minute,
Mm.
pause, intentionally breathe. We breathe all the time, but it's not intentional. Most of it is just autopilot. We pause, we stop, we take an in breath through the nose, usually hold it, and then let it out through the mouth. Do it maybe twice or three times if necessary. Nobody's going to notice. It's just a small pause, a tiny pause. Because when we do that, we stop the system
Yeah.
just momentarily enough to be able to respond rather than react. So that's a good tool to have in your back pocket, as it were, or in your shirt pocket, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so
I
that's
think
what
that's
comes to that.
amazing. When you were talking about pause, I thought of another pause, a pause that might maybe be a little bit longer, where you talk about something and then you go away. You might disagree, but you have the time to think about it fully and then come back into the conversation. So often, what happens, like I would say, especially for parents, is that you want the answer now, now, now. Do you understand what I'm saying? You shouldn't do this. Da, 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 da. You want this agreement. You want them to go like, yes, mom, or yes, dad. And I understand I'm going to do exactly what you said for me to see which does not happen. And that creates even more frustration for you. At the end of the day, you can pause for longer. You can pause for one day, come back on the conversation tomorrow, come back in 1 week. At the weekend, when it's sunny and life is good, you don't have school or work or anything. At that time, maybe that's something maybe to consider. And one thing that I think is really important that I think gets lost somewhere is that, and I think we spoke about that many times in this podcast. You are your own person, and your teen is also their own person. They're learning to develop their own resilience, their own trust, their own character. The fact that you want the answer now, or that you want the agreement now, is not helping into creating their own and developing their own character. So this is something maybe to think that, okay, it's not only about me and how I'm feeling, it's also about how they're feeling. So empathy, compassion, what Steve just said
Yep.
earlier.
Yeah. Brilliant. So remember, comments, questions, thoughts, whatever, share them. Don't hesitate to use whatever messaging system is available to you, and we will always respond. And we'll do it as quickly as we possibly can as well. There may be a minute delay, but in the second minute. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And if you like this episode, please share, like, send it to all your friends, parents, friends as well, so that they can learn from it. Bye.
Bye.